Hello everyone and welcome to my first Django tutorial. My name is Luis Moreno and I'm a full stack developer. For the last 6 months, I've learned about Python, Django, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and basically all the stuff you need to know to build websites, and not just websites, but also web applications. For the last month and a half, I have been developing a sales application with different features such as tracking sales, inventory, some CRM features as well. But for this tutorial, I want to teach you guys how to use Django plus Charts.js to build a sales dashboard, a good looking sales dashboard, which you can use for your personal projects however you want. I just want you to take the knowledge I give you today and use it for your own projects. Now, I want to set some expectations before we start. What you need to know before you start this tutorial, well, you need to have basic knowledge of Django, and this means you should be able to start a project, you should be able to start an application, and you should feel comfortable navigating through the different folders of a Django project. And as you know, if you're familiar with Django, you know at a certain point you're going to have a lot of folders, you're going to have a lot of templates, etc. Right? So you should have that basic knowledge. I'll refresh some of it, but I'm not going to go in depth in that part. You should have basic knowledge of Bootstrap, which is the framework we'll use to create the interface. We're going to use Bootstrap because it's going to be easier for all of us. Instead of using regular CSS, we're going to use the Bootstrap framework. You should have basic knowledge of JavaScript and jQuery, and you can use the IDE of your preference. In my case, I'm going to use Atom, but you can use whatever you want. As for the objectives of the tutorial, well, I'm going to refresh some basic Django concepts. I'll refresh some basic Bootstrap components, especially how to use divs for columns and rows, as well as some card elements that we're going to use to put our charts inside of those cards. We're going to learn how to use AJAX to perform queries to our database, and the data we get from those AJAX calls is what we're going to use to create our charts. Okay? We're going to create different charts to measure different KPIs. So by the end of the tutorial, we will create 2 vertical bars, one to count how many sales by rep, and one for sum of sales by rep. Then we're going to create a horizontal bar chart to count how many sales per product you have during the month. We're going to create 2 line charts for yearly sales, one for count and one for sum. And finally, we're going to create a line chart for new customers gained every month. And this is going to be very similar to the sales charts in bullet number 3, which is going to be a yearly progression to understand trends and that kind of stuff. So with that being said, if you're ready, I'm ready. So let's get started. All right. So as I said, I'm not going to go through all the basics of Django, but I do want to show you the documentation for Django, where it explains how to start a project and the command you need to use to do so, which is basically Django-admin start project and the name of your project. For my case, I already did all of this, so I won't go through that. However, I will show you how to start an application, which is the one we're going to use to create the dashboard. A few things to mention: I'm using Django 3.1 and Python 3.8 for this tutorial. As you can see, I already have several things created in my project. As I said, I've been working on this for the past month and a half. So I already have a client application which holds all my templates for this interface and also my models and some other stuff. I have the product application which holds all product information, and I have the sales application that holds all sales related information. right? Now for this one, we're going to create a new app, which is going to hold all the report information. And we're not going to create new models for this one. We're just going to use the existing ones and parse through the data so we can graph the information, right? So the command we use to create a new application, as you know, is Python manage.py start app and the name of the application. In my case, I'm going to call it reportes, which is Spanish for reports. Hit the enter button and Django will do its magic and create a new folder with you with most of the things you're going to need to work on it. However, we do need to add a few additional things here. First of all, we're going to create a new folder called templates, which is going to hold another folder called the same way as your application. By convention, this is the way you work in Django, right? So you're going to have your application, templates, and inside of the templates, a new folder with the same name as the application, and this is the one that's going to hold the HTML templates, right? I'm going to create a template right away so we can just get started with this, and we're going to call it sales dashboard .html. All right, good. We're also going to need a new Python file, so we're going to go to new file, and this is going to be created at the same level as the report application. So we're going to call this one urls.py, which is the file we're going to use to connect all the URLs of the reports application to our Django project, right? We already have views. We're not going to need the rest of it. We're going to leave it there, but we're not going to need it. Now, another step we need to take is we need to go to a root project folder, which is called by the same name of the one at the top of the parent folder. And we need to go to our settings.py. And remember, we need to go ahead and find our applications. I think I skipped it. Here it is. And we're going to add our new application here, which is called reportes, and save. Right? Good. All right. So I think we have all the folders we need to start typing some code. Okay. So I have my setup ready. I usually like to open all the files I'm going to need beforehand. So, I feel a little bit more organized. You know that when the Django project starts becoming more complex, you're going to have a lot of files, so organization is important. So I have the views.py for the reports folder. I have the urls.py for the reports folder as well, or the report application. I have the main urls.py of the parent folder of the project, and you'll see why we need that. I have the sales dashboard.html, and I also have other HTML files which basically link or will link to the sales dashboard. Okay, so I like to start working on my views. Now, for this project or for this tutorial, I'm going to use function-based views. You can do the exact same thing with a class-based views. I think it's just a personal preference. They're both as powerful as the other. This is just a personal preference thing. Okay, so we're gonna call this sales dashboard, and since it's a function-based views, it takes in the request. It's going to return render, and I usually like to pass the template as a variable, right? So the template is this is so the code is more readable, right? So reportes / sales dashboard.html, right? Okay, so right now it's just going to render the request and the template. I hate this thing and the template. Okay, cool. So we can save our views for now. We're not going to do anything fancy yet. Now for URLs, we're going to do from Django .urls import path, and from dot, meaning the current directory, we're going to import our views, right? So we're going to get this, we're going to give this app a name called reportes, and we're going to create our path for the dashboard. So that's going to be the name for this, or for the URL for this one, is going to be sales dashboard. This is going to come from views. I hate this new thing after an update. When you hit enter, it's just going to add a new word to whatever you already typed. So that's just, it doesn't make sense. I don't like that. But anyways, sales dashboard. There you go. We're going to remove the parenthesis. And last but not least, we're going to give it a name, which is sales underscore dashboard. For the name, I usually like to use underscore, whatever, it doesn't matter. Oh, I'm missing something here. I'm missing a forward slash. My bad. There you go. All right. So we have our URLs done, but we need to connect these URLs to the main project URLs, right? So I'm going to put this one here, just to give some continuity to the ones I already added. So for this one again, it's a path. Report this, and for this one we're going to use the include function, and we're going to include reportes.urls, and don't forget to put a comma here, or else Django will complain. Okay, now for the HTML, we're going to extend from the base HTML, and we're just going to put a block here, body, and we're just going to put a p tag for test. And last but not least, we're going to add the URLs that will connect this to, wherever we have this. So where is it? Here it is. So first of all, this is in the nav bar. We're going to say URL. This one's called reportes, and this one is going to be sales dashboard. Okay, and we're going to use this same URL for that was the index, like the start page, and this is the base one, which is going to have a nav bar here, which is this one right here. All right, cool. So in theory, we're done. Let's go ahead and test. So I'm going to open my terminal, and we're going to run python manage.py, run server, and let's hope we don't get any error messages. Okay. So I think I have an issue here. Oh, my bad. I forgot something. Duh. You have to say URL patterns. Oh my god, I forgot this totally. And this is supposed to go inside. Alright, it should be good now. Perfect. Alright, so let's test it out. Okay, so this is the start page of my project. So right now, if I click on reports, I should be able to see the test p tag that we added, and yep, it's right there. Very small font because I'm using a p tag, but whatever. Okay, so this means that all the connections are good, and now we can start working on how we want this to look like, and then we're gonna start working on the charts. Okay, for this part of the tutorial, we're gonna work on the sales dashboard.html document. Basically, we're gonna build the interface. So if you remember, we're gonna create 6 charts, right? So we're gonna create 2 columns, 2 rows of 3 columns actually. Or no, actually we're gonna do it different. We're gonna create 3 rows of 2 columns each, right? And in each column, we're gonna have cards, okay? So we're gonna go through the process of creating that. So first of all, since I'm using Bootstrap, you have to remember that in order to use Bootstrap, if you're using the CDN version, right, you need to add this link to your document, which you get from the Bootstrap documentation. For this tutorial, I'm using Bootstrap 4.5, okay? Cool. So first of all, we want a row, and in this row, we're gonna have 3 columns, as I said. So we're going to create the first one. We're going to say, remember that the columns, I'm sorry, we're going to have 2 columns. So remember that on the HTML doc, you have 12 columns, right? So if you want to make it a 2-column row, then each column has to be of 6 columns each, right? So we're going to say call MD for medium 6. But at the same time, we're going to make it call 12, and that's going to happen when this turns into a mobile version. Now, I'm going to create another div where I'm going to put a card and the card body. Okay, so we're going to copy this here. We're going to copy this once again. And now, we're going to copy this 3 more times. And I think that's it, right? Let's go ahead and test it out on the view. Okay, so we're back on the web application. So let's refresh, and there you go. So we have 2 columns or 3 rows and 2 columns on each side, right? The charts might be quite big right now, so let's do the following. Okay, I'm going to show you one more trick. We're going to wrap everything on another column, which is going to be called MD10, so it's not going to take all the space. Oh, sorry. And on the mobile version, it's going to be called 12. But we're going to add MX Auto. And what this is going to do is basically like in CSS when you do margin auto. That's the equivalent. Oh, my bad. That's the equivalent, but for Bootstrap. Okay. So let's copy all of this. Put it inside of this, and let's test it out. Okay, let's refresh, and there you go. Right, it's not using all the screen, which I prefer that way. And we're gonna do one more thing. We want the charts, or the cards in this case, to have some space in between. So we're gonna add an inline style. Okay. Okay, and we're gonna say that here, style, and we're gonna do margin top. And we're going to do this 30 pixels for each of these. And let's copy all of this. And let's just add it to every card. Probably you could do this with CSS, right? Just going to make it this way for now. I don't want to go ahead and... I'm not a big fan of CSS, to be honest. Alright, so I think good. So let's test it out. Let's refresh. Perfect. Right. Good. One last thing that we're missing here is we need to add canvas, whatever, to each card, and those canvases where we're going to render our reports later, right? We're going to do it now, so we can just have that ready, and then when we start writing our JavaScript and all that stuff, it should just automatically render the charts. So let's type in canvas ID. This is going to be sales count rep. Height and width is okay. We're going to copy, we're going to paste. We're just going to change this amount rep. Okay. This is going to be sales per product. This is going to be sales year count. This is going to be sales year sum, and last but not least, new customers. Okay, you'll see that. Oh well, yeah, I did create the canvas because I did specify a width and a height. But after we're done with this, then we should be able to see our charts right here. Okay, cool. So I guess we're gonna add a title here too, because it looks kind of empty. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I guess we're ready to start working on the backend stuff. Okay, so I'll meet you there. Alright guys, so it's time to start coding the backend stuff. So we'll go line by line, coding the whole thing and explaining what's happening, alright, or what are the things that we're trying to achieve here. Okay, so before we start coding any logic or anything, I need to import some data. So first of all, I'm going to import my sales model, which is called from ventas.models import orden. So orden means order in English. It's orden is Spanish for order. That's what I'm trying to say. Uh, and basically, because the system works as a status, as an order-based system, so the order could have different statuses, and we'll get to those in a minute. So for now, let's just leave it like that. Then I'm going to import datetime because I will need to create a datetime object. Then we're going to use a very useful module, at least in my case, I find it very useful. From collections, import counter. Okay, so we're going to create a counter object as well. And from Django.http, import JSON response. And this JSON response is what's going to help us basically send this data over through the AJAX request. Okay, so I think that's all we need to import for now. Now I'm going to create a datetime object, which I'm going to call today, and this is equal to datetime.date.today. And basically this, if you're familiar with Python, which you should be, this is just going to return today's date, right? And now I'm also going to bring some data from my model. And this, I was talking about the order statuses, right? So the order can have 4 different statuses. It can be new, so is the first tuple here. It can be processed, it can be paid, and it can be canceled. For this situation, we only care about the paid ones, okay? Because a paid order is actually a sale. You already got the money, the customer already paid, so that's going to count as a sale. Anything else is not going to count, okay? It's not going to count as a, it's not going to count. All right, cool. So I think we have all the things we need. Now we're going to extract the data we need from our model, okay? Now I'm not going to be using the all function for getting the model data, because you know at a certain point the data might become too large and it's just not going to be very efficient. So instead we're going to apply some filters, and we're going to use another function which is built in for Django models, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So we're going to call this sales model, okay? And this is going to be equal to orden objects.filter, okay? So what are the filters we're going to use? First of all, I'm going to use the status filter. Estado is status in Spanish. And I'm going to use the list of tuples I have above, okay? So I'm going to say that the status should be equal to estados orden, and I'm going to use some indexing here, so it's going to be equal to 2, 0. Well, sorry, 0. So again, you should be familiar with what I'm doing here. This shouldn't be weird for you. So, okay. Next, I'm going to filter by created date. So for the dashboard, at least for this chart, I'm just going to look at monthly sales. Okay. So to accomplish that, I'm going to call the created date field, which is called fecha creado in Spanish. And I'm going to use the double underscore. I don't know how you call it, but the double underscore that basically allows you to say fecha creado month, right? So in this case, it's just going to look at the month for the created date. And now this is going to be equal to today, which is the datetime object dot month, right? And basically now my model is filtered by status equal to paid and created date equal to the current month. Okay. Again, you should be familiar with this. And if not, well, I hope you learn a little bit more about filtering. Now, we're going to use a function called values. All right, let me just stop there. So what happens if I use the current query set, right? The current query set in sales models. Well, that's precisely what's going to happen. The type of data structure I'm returning from this is a query set object, and that's not going to be useful for the charts, right? For charts, we need more primitive types of data like strings or numbers. So to do that, you use the values list function, which is basically going to extract a list of the values you specify inside of the function, right? So for this one, I'm going to say creado por. So creado por is the field that holds the user who created the sale, okay? However, if I just leave it this way, if I just put it this way, since this is a foreign key in the model, this would return the ID, right, for the user. So it's going to return an integer. We don't want that, right? So we're going to use some double underscore again. So this time, since this is a foreign key field, we're going to call username. So now this will return a string of the username who created the sale, right? And next, we're also going to filter another field called total más propina. Oh, my bad. So since this is based off a restaurant, so so it makes sense to you guys, it's kind of focused for restaurants. This is total plus tip, which is basically the total amount paid by the customer. And that's the field that we're going to use for the sum of sales, right? Because it's the total paid. Okay, so what is this going to return? Well, if I print the sales model right now, it's going to return a list of tuples. And the tuple, each tuple will have 2 items. So the first item is going to be the username of whoever created the sale. And the second item of the tuple is going to be the total amount paid, right? So with that being said, we need to clean up our data first. So now, since I have 2 values, I have in each tuple, I have salesperson and I have an amount, right? Now I need to extract, for now, in order to get the count of sales, I want to extract just the usernames from my sales model, okay? And for that, we're going to combine 2 things. We're going to combine the counter class, and we're going to use list comprehensions, which is, as you know, is a Python thing, right? So we're going to call this variable sales count rep, and this is equal to a counter object, and inside the counter object, we're going to say the following: rep 0 for rep in sales model. Okay. And just with this line, and this is the awesome thing with Python and the counter class, just with this line, I already extracted all the usernames from the sales model, right? And that's why you see rep 0, because I'm indexing the first item in the tuples, which is the username. And so that just returns a list with all the users, right, who have created or who have paid sales for the month. Now I will wrap that in a counter class, and this returns a dictionary where the key is the username and the value is how many times the user appears in the list, which that is basically equal to how many paid sales I have as the sales rep for the month. And that is precisely what you need to build your first chart. Remember, the first chart is count of sales for the month. And that what we have, that variable right there, the sales count rep, which is a counter object, a dictionary, is precisely what we need for the first chart. Okay? Now, we're gonna go ahead and code the second, the logic for the second one, which is sum of sales, right? So this one we're gonna call sales amount wrap. Okay, now this is going to be equal to an empty dictionary. And here's what I'll do next. I'll do a for loop for rep in sales count rep. Okay, so for every rep here, okay, so for the keys in this dictionary, sales amount rep, the key is going to be the same rep. So it's going to share the same keys as the sales count rep. Okay. But the value of each rep for this case is going to be equal to 0. Okay, so I'm initializing a new dictionary with the same sales reps as keys, but the values are now 0 for each and every rep. Okay, so I have initialized my dictionary, and now I'm going to do 2 additional for loops. So for every sale in the sales model, yep, okay. Actually, I'm just going to change this to sales model here. I don't want it to be plural. There you go. I think, yeah, okay. So for every sale in the sales model, and for every rep in sales amount rep, which is the dictionary we just created, right? Here's another one. If sale 0. So if the username in the tuple is equal to the rep, okay, to the key in our dictionary, yeah. So now we're going to do the following: sales amount rep plus equal the sale amount. Okay, so let's go over this again. For every cell in the model, so for every tuple here, and for every key in this dictionary that we just created, if the username at index 0 for the tuple is equal to the key that we're comparing against, then, oh, sorry, here, we're missing something. There you go. Should be good now. So the value of every rep, so the zeros we initialized, are going to be plus equal to the amount of every sale created or paired up with that user. Okay? And basically, guys, at this point, we already have the two data structures, or the two data. Basically, we have the two data structures that we need to pass through our charts. Okay, as simple as that. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna start coding the things we need to actually send that information over a JSON response, so the front end can get that information and render the charts, right? Before we do that, I do want to show you guys that all these charts have their documentation in charts.js.org, right? You can just Google search. I just did it this way: charts.js bar chart. You go to that documentation, guys. If you want to customize the chart even more, I strongly suggest you come to the documentation and read. That's how I learned how to use different things. As you can see, you can create a stacked bar chart. You can do a horizontal bar chart, etc. Right? So it explains how the data structure works. Okay, so this is very, very useful. And as I said, I strongly suggest you guys come here and read it, right? Especially this side of the data set. We're going to be working with this right now. All right. So let's go back to the editor. So since I said that we're going to send this information over AJAX, right? The first thing we need to write in. I want you to see something. Most of the time when you do AJAX calls, in other tutorials, you're going to see them sending or recommending to build a new view to get this data from. For our situation, we're going to use the same view. We're not going to create a new view to do the AJAX stuff. We're going to do it in the same view. I find it easier that way, and you can have everything in a single view. It's going to be a complex view, right? It's going to have a lot of code, but everything's going to be in one place, okay? So if request dot is AJAX. So if we have an AJAX request, what do we want to do? All right, we're going to create a variable for the data of the first chart, okay? And what I mean by that is the following. So when you work with Charts.js, one of the items that you will have to put in the object here is the data, right? And this is the variable we're going to build right now. Okay, we're going to build the data needed basically to build the chart. All right, so we're going to work on that right now. All right, so I'm going to call this sales count chart data. A pretty long variable, but I just want you guys to be clear on what this is, okay? So one thing we need here first is the labels of our data, okay? And this is going to be, the value for this is going to be, we're going to use the list built-in function, and it's going to be sales count rep dot keys. Okay, so the keys of the dictionary of the first one we created, that's going to be the labels of our chart data. Next, we need to build the data set. All right, and if you want more information on the data sets, you can go back to the Charts.js documentation, have a look after. While you can do that, while you can just pause the tutorial and go back, right, so you can understand what this is a little bit better, right? So the data sets will have the label for the KPI, okay, and the label for this KPI is going to be, we're going to name it sales by rep count. Okay. Next, we need the actual data that's going to be measured in the chart, and that's going to be the list. Again, we're going to do a list again of sales count rep dot values. All right, and this is why we needed those dictionaries, right? Because that way we can just call the keys, and then we can call the values, and basically that's exactly what you need to build this. All right. Cool. And we're gonna do, let's say, And there, we're gonna leave it like that right now. Okay. Actually, no. Let's go ahead and create a background color. All right. This is one of the dataset properties you can find in the documentation. However, I want to show you a nifty trick. I can put a color here using the RGBA sort of function that you have in CSS, where you pass in the RGB colors and the alpha, right? And but the problem is that you need a color for each bar that you're gonna have. In this case, I have sales for 2 sales reps. So if I just put one color there, the problem will be that only one bar is gonna have the color, and that's not what we want. Okay, we want all the bars to have color. Now, for this case, I will give the same color for all the bars in the same chart. However, I'll give different colors to the 2 charts. So one's going to be blue and the other one's going to be purple bars. Okay, but I'm going to show you the trick to basically get this going. All right. So right here, I'm going to create a variable called color. And this variable is going to be a string that's going to say RGBA. Alright, so it's just like the stuff you use in CSS. I'm going to give it a color. I already have this color. You can just use the same one or use whatever you want. And alpha of 0.7. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to create an empty list. Bar color is equal to an empty list. Okay. Now I'm going to do a for loop. For sale in range len sales count rep. Okay, so I'm using the same dictionary as before, right? I'm going to do bar color dot append color. Okay, and now I can pass bar color as the value for the background color, and you'll see what this does once we build the logic for the front end. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna make this a little bit easier for the second chart. Second chart is also a bar chart, and we're just gonna change a few things in the logic, so it's just easier for us to copy this. Okay, I'm just gonna copy this right here. And we're just going to change a few things. So we're going to say sales amount chart data, sales amount rep.keys, and sales amount rep.values. Okay, that's it. Oh, I'm sorry. I see values here. This should be values. All right. And another thing I'm going to change is I'm going to give this a different color, right? So I'm going to create a new variable of color 2. And this, I'm just going to copy this right here and just change the values, okay? The values for this one are 121, 67, 117. And I'm going to leave the same 0.7 at the end. I'm going to create a new list, bar color 2, empty list. And I'm going to use the same for loop, bar color, because both for loops are, both dictionaries are of the same length, so it doesn't matter. Bar color 2 dot append color 2. And this is going to be equal to color 2 right here. Alright, that's it. We have created the data value of our charts. It's that simple. Okay, and now to finish this off, I'm going to create a data dict dictionary, which is basically what I'm going to send over uh, AJAX, or a JSON response actually. And the first one, I'm going to give the same name as the variables here. Sales count rep. The value is sales count. Oh, sorry, it's this one right here. Sales count rep chart data. Okay, and comma. Second is sales amount chart data, and the value for this one is sales amount chart data. Right now, we're gonna say return JSON response, and our data is equal to the data dict we just created, comma, safe equal false. And that's it, guys. We have created, or this is all the stuff we need, or the data we're going to send over through the AJAX call, so we can render the charts. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead, or the next chapter, we're going to go ahead and code the front end, and finally we're going to see the charts rendered. Before we code the front end stuff, the JavaScript stuff, I want to show you one thing you're going to need to add to your project, to your base HTML document actually, so you can use Charts.js. And that's basically this script right here, which is a CDN. And once you have this in your base .html, you should be able to use all the functions and all the stuff related to Charts.js. Okay? Alright guys, so we're ready to start working on the front end stuff. So I'm gonna build, or I'm gonna type in the code in the HTML doc. You can do this in your static JavaScript file of your Django project as well. For now, just to make it easier, I'll do it here. But you can do whatever you want, right? If you're used to working off your JavaScript file, the static one, that's okay. Or if you prefer to do it in the same HTML document, that's okay too. Right? It's still gonna work. All right, we're gonna start with some jQuery. We're gonna say document ready function, right? And we want this, that when you load this page, we're gonna run this function called charts, but the charts function is not defined yet. So let's go ahead and define it. So we're gonna say function, and it's gonna be charts, parenthesis, brackets, and let's just do the semicolon here. All right. So we're gonna say the following. We're gonna do the AJAX call. All right. Open parenthesis, open brackets, and we're gonna do the semicolon right now so we don't forget this part, and enter. Okay, so the first thing we want is the URL where we're gonna get the data from. In this case, since I'm getting the or I'm going to attempt to get the data from the same view, I'm going to say window.location.pathname, and that's basically the current URL. All right. If you're doing this on the static file, you will need to type the path. Okay. Okay. And then success, if the sorry, if the call is successful, then we want to run a function. Okay. And this function is going to take the response. And by the way, the response is, whatever data you got from the URL, and in this case, that's going to be the data dict we passed through the JSON response. Okay, and we open brackets again, and if it's successful, we're going to say sales count chart. This is going to take in response, open parenthesis, and what we're going to see here, what we're going to pass here, remember that we built that data dict, right? And what we want to get from the data dict response is the sales count chart data, right? If you see I'm passing this as an argument of a function called sales count chart, by the way, this function doesn't exist yet, so we still need to create it, all right? Comma, and the second one is sales sum chart, which takes something similar to the first one. It's going to take a similar argument, but it's going to take the other one, which is sales sum chart data. Okay? And we're going to do this here, and I'm not sure why I put a comma there, but there you go. So what does this mean? It means that when you load the page, it's going to run the charts function, and the charts function is going to run an AJAX call, which is going to look for the data or the response in the current URL, the current view. If it's successful, it's going to run the function and it's going to take that response as an argument, and it's going to run two functions: the sales count chart, which takes the response sales count chart data as an argument, and the sales sum chart, which is going to take the response sales sum chart data that we created in the backend in the last chapter, right? Okay, cool. So we're good so far, except that these functions don't exist yet, right? So we're gonna have to write these down. So we're gonna say function sales count chart. It's over here. This is a function, so parenthesis. It's going to take the data as a parameter, and the data is right here. And we open brackets, semicolon. Right, don't forget that. I actually don't need it for this one, but whatever. Let's take it off. All right. The stuff I'm going to write right now is for Charts.js. Okay. So you can find this in their documentation. Right. Basically, this is how to build a bar chart with Charts.js. So I'm going to say var ctx. Again, this is all coming from the documentation in Charts.js. We're going to say document dot get element by ID. Now this is JavaScript, right? We're going to call, and what we're going to get here is our first canvas right here, sales count rep, which is where we're going to place our first chart. Okay. Okay. Good. We create that variable. Now we say var bar chart 1 is equal to new chart, and the new chart will take in the ctx variable and some other stuff. So we're going to open brackets here. We're going to do a semicolon, and we're going to start typing the things we need to build our chart. So the type of chart we're going to build for this one is bar. This is going to create a vertical bar chart. Data, the value for this is going to be the data. All right, so that's going to be the argument we passed here. Okay, so that's the logic we built in the backend. We're going to add some options here. Okay, we're going to say that we're going to open brackets, and we're going to say scales, and we're going to open some new brackets here too. We're going to say y-axis, and we're going to open some more brackets, and we're going to say ticks, and new brackets. So there's a lot of brackets, you know, JavaScript is like that, so don't judge me, judge JavaScript. Begin at 0 true. Okay, so this is just gonna basically make sure that the data for the y-axis starts at 0, which I think it makes it look better. And we're going to add a comma here, or we're going to add a new option, and we're going to add a title to our chart. We open brackets, we're going to say display true. The text of our title is going to be sales count month, okay? And we're going to set a font size of 20 pixels for the title, okay? And that's it, guys. Here we have built our first bar chart, okay? Building the second one should be very easy because just like we did before in the backend logic, we can just copy this, paste it again, and we're just going to replace a few things. So this is sales sum chart. This is going to take sales amount rep as the element ID for CTX, right? It's always a bar. Data is going to be the same since we're passing it here. And this is going to say sales sum. Okay. Cool. Now that's it. All right. Now the last thing I'm going to do, and this is optional, guys, I'm going to do this because I want my charts to be updated automatically after a certain amount of time. So I want this AJAX request to be performed every, let's say every 30 seconds for now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my first function, the charts function. Okay, and I'm going to add one more thing to the AJAX call. Once the AJAX call is completed, we're going to run a new function. This one doesn't take in any parameters. We open brackets and we say set time out. Okay, and we're going to set a timeout on the charts function. And it's going to do this every 30,000 milliseconds, which is basically 30 seconds. And there you go. Basically, we have constructed the code necessary to render our charts in our project. So now that we're done typing in the front-end stuff, let's go ahead and run the server. Let's hope we don't get any errors here. There you go. And let's have a look. Okay, so I'm in my project now. Let's go to reports. And voila. As you can see, the reports have been rendered. You'll notice that I changed the size, at least the height of the charts a little bit. But you know, this is a personal preference thing. I'll probably do the same thing for the rest of them. But you can see that Luigi CFH has 113, and then you see 2,942 with 85, and etc. You can format this to show currency. I'm not going to go through that right now. But another thing I want to show you is if we give this a few seconds, you'll see that since we created the set timeout function over the charts, this data should automatically refresh after 30 seconds. Okay, and the way we're going to notice that is, there you go. Since the charts have an animation every time they're created or rendered, that's how you know the data is being refreshed every 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm not going to code the rest of the charts in this video. If you guys want to see the full thing, please leave a like, subscribe if you think this was useful for you. I'll try to start posting new videos every week, I hope, with different tutorials of things I'm learning myself that I think might be useful for you if you're in that learning path of Django, coding, whatever, right? So please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. And if you want to see part 2, please leave it in the comments and I'll go ahead and basically show you the entire thing. I know I said at the beginning we're going to build 6 charts, but at the same time I want to see if people want to see this type of content, right? So I hope you do, and if you do, I'll build the entire thing and I'll show you how to code all the charts and we can all learn together. Okay? So have a good one. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye bye.